Hey, so this is my first live on Facebook. I'm currently at the African burial ground here in New York. Okay, so as you can see right here, it says the African burial ground was labeled Negroes Burial Ground on the 1755 map at right, which is this map right here. Right, so you see see what the map is all about here. And then to the other right you have the ground level. You have, you know, some of the stuff that is involved in this whole African burial ground. This is where some of our ancestors were actually, you know, buried here in New York. You know, you can see the ground level. They have, you know, poured concrete from the 1890s. Walls were made of brick and mortar. You have some of the coffins. Unfortunately, the museum is actually closed, but I'm on the outside, you know, because of COVID-19, so-called COVID-19. You know, it's closed. So I just want to walk you through some of the stuff on the outside. Maybe in the future we might go into the museum proper and find out some few things. But like I was reading, it says colonial New York laws banned African funerals in officially consecrated graveyards, prohibited gatherings of large numbers of enslaved Africans, and decreed that funerals had to be held during daylight. Again, funerals were banned for your ancestors, right? And then gatherings were actually prohibited in large numbers for enslaved Africans. Very, very key information here for you guys to know. You need to wake up and know your history, right? Nonetheless, Africans and their descendants held burial ceremonies in a cemetery outside the city wall near a ravine, right? As New York City expanded northeast, the burial ground was closed in 1794 and eventually into lots for sale. So basically, it's actually telling you that even when we defied the orders, right, for funerals, and we're able to bury our people, they still found ways and means, you know, to stop that. And later on, they actually sold the burial grounds. So it basically is trying to tell you that most of the places you see here, not just around here, and this is an area where you have a lot of federal buildings. You know, right across the street, you can see right there, it's a federal building right there, right? The Jacob K. Javits, you know, federal building, right? Right across the street, it's a federal building. Right here, so I can guarantee you that even on that federal building, there were our ancestors, some of our ancestors that were actually buried underground. This is very important for some of us to know your history, you know, like it's important for us to know for different reasons, you know. Some of you do not understand the connection between Africa and this land called, you know, today called United States. I'm not even going to go into the history with regards to the actual, you know, connection between the so-called indigenous tribes here and Africans, the original African tribes, you know, the connection between. I'm not going to bore you with all that history. Today, I just want you to see something for yourselves. You know, that this is a focus on the Africa burial ground. For those of us who just joined us, we are at the African burial ground here in New York. You can see right there, the African burial ground. Okay, labeled as Negroes Burial Ground, right here in New York. So let's move on to, and this is the sacred land, you know, that ancestors were buried on. So I'm just going to go around for you to see some few things. Okay, it tells you right here, Africans were brought to the Dutch colony, New Amsterdam. So New York used to be called New Amsterdam. I'm not going to bore you with the history of how the Dutch also, killed the indigenous people that lived here in New York, and then sacked them from this place and then took over, the Dutch. But it tells you Africans were brought to the Dutch colony of New Amsterdam from different regions. And if you know the history of the slave trade, it actually took place in a specific area, which is the West African region, and then a few areas of the central, African portion, and then one or two, maybe the eastern portion, but mostly central and Western Africa. So it's telling you, right, they were taken from different regions with diverse cultures, right, religions. Well, Africans were not religious people, they were spiritual people. So that's another miseducation right there. But we later on we'll deal with that. But they're telling you that, they were taken from diverse cultures, religions, and languages. And most of us have forgotten our languages. Not just being here, but, even in back home in all our various countries in Africa. We've forgotten most of our history and our languages, our cultures, our spiritual life, not religious life. Africans are not religious people, they are spiritual people. There's a difference. Okay, so it tells you in 1664, the British captured New Amsterdam. So the British took over from the Dutch, right? And renamed it, they renamed New Amsterdam, New York. So again, New York used to be called New Amsterdam because the Dutch were the original ones who captured. Just like the Portuguese came to Ghana, they took over Elmina and renamed it Elmina. Elmina wasn't the original name, but they named it Elmina, meaning the mine. And then later, the British, various groups, the Dutch and the rest of them, and then later the British finally captured and Ghana gained independence. It was the same thing here in New York as well. So the British renamed it New York, and then before the American Revolution, New York had more enslaved Africans. So again, it's telling you how New York, which is the center of, I would say, the epicenter of economic affairs globally, used to enslave a lot of Africans. I'm not even going to go into the bigger, history of how, how do you call it, the New York Stock Exchange, all these economic hub, which makes the United States one of the most dominant forces in the world, was created by Africans. They will never teach you any of this in your history, either in your schools or in your history books. And this is what I want our people to wake up to, right? You have no idea the connection between yourselves in Ghana and in West Africa and to this what you call the capitalist system, you call capitalism today. Whatever it is you call capitalism today. You have no idea the connection, right? So it's telling you right here, right, that New York had more enslaved Africans. Its most valuable commodity, the most valuable commodity at the time, was our African enslaved ancestors. Through our ancestors, they created capitalism, they created the New York Stock Exchange, they created the banks, even the universities. Most of these universities actually had to use, African enslaved ancestors as collateral to build their universities. These are the universities most of your so-called leaders, MPP, NDC, all these incompetent leaders actually attended. Most of them do not even know the history behind the universities they attended, right? So it's telling us right here that the most valuable commodity right here in New York at the time, in 1664, when the British captured New York, was slaves, our African ancestors. And it says it was the most valuable commodity than any other colony in the North. So the North, this whole idea that here in the United States, they want to propagate this idea that, the they wanted to actually stop slavery. It wasn't actually true. It's telling you right here. New York was one of the colonies that actually, you know, pushed that agenda that they were actually trying to fight, so-called enslavement of African ancestors. But they were actually, it was actually the most valuable commodity at the time, right? I already showed you over there that they were actually banning our ancestors from having funerals. And I've already told you, in this area, this enclave that I'm standing on right now, is one of the places that our ancestors were actually buried. And today, it's a federal building. It's a federal building, on the land that our ancestors were actually buried on. And they stopped them from doing funerals. It says right here, there were also free Africans, right? One day we'll go into the free Africans who actually made up this entire various so-called maroon tribes, and even the native tribes. There were a lot of Africans that made up the native tribes as well. Some descended from those freed by the Dutch West Indian Company. This is a very key word here, Dutch West Indian Company. One day we'll go into it as well. This was the company behind every, I would say about 90 to 95% of the slave trade. Dutch West Indian Company. And don't let the Indian company deceive you, or West deceive you. It was a company that was stationed in Holland. The people we call the Dutch, right? But they were behind almost every, ship purchasing, every single thing, almost every single thing. All the ships that that took the slaves, not just to Europe, but here to the United States, to other parts of North America, South America, and Europe, was actually controlled and run by this company, Dutch West India Company. Right here it tells you men cleared farmland, filled swamps, and built structures and roads like Broadway and the Wall, which is the Wall Street, right? So our ancestors actually, it's telling you right here, our ancestors actually built what they call Broadway and the Wall Street. Wall Street today is actually the place where the world economy is actually run on. The New York Stock Exchange, some of which have your companies in Ghana, and listed on, is actually was built by our African ancestors. It's telling you right here. Women sewed, cooked, harvested, and cared for owners' children as well as their own. From an early age, children carried water and firewood. The work was hard, and death rates for Africans were disproportionately very high. So it's telling you right here that the women not just only sewed, cooked, and harvested, they cared for the owners. So that the children of the slave holders, they had to take care of them as well. And the work was hard, and death rates for Africans were disproportionately high. I'm just trying to let you know that your ancestors actually built this country. They built this country. From Wall Street, it's telling you right here. I didn't make any of this up. Some of you have been trying to wake you up for years, but you might not see the essence of some of the things I'm talking about, probably until maybe I'm gone. Okay, it's telling you right here that the African men built roads, they built all the structures, they built the roads like Broadway and the Wall Street. Wall Street today, again, emphasis on Wall Street. Wall Street, right? Okay, let's move on. It says this is a depiction. Okay, this is a depiction of how the Africans were actually working, It tells you right here, this is a depiction of it. This is 1797. Right here it tells you another depiction. African American workers positioned hollowed out pine log pipes in a trench along Broad Street. The 25-mile pipeline formed the city's first municipal water system in the early 1800s, right? Africans actually built the first municipal water system here in the United States. in the early 1800s. How many of you knew this? Right? That your African ancestors actually built this country. It tells you on, laborers tore up the cobblestone streets, dug trenches, laid and joined the pipe sections, and filled in the trenches. Pay was $1 a day. So the African, enslaved workers actually were being paid $1 a day. Right? Enslaved workers' wages went to their owners. So, yes, we have the free ones. So the free ones basically were paid $1 a day. Right? The free ones, those who were free, were paid $1 a day. But those who were enslaved, their wages went to their owners, those who were enslaving them, those who were actually the slave owners. And these are the people that brought you your religion. The same people that brought you your religion, which most Africans will do everything to defend, right? Whilst they were enslaving your ancestors, they were telling you about their Godan, their deity, which is Godan. Godan is not the creator. Some of you do not even know that, right? Some of you, everything, once you are talking to you as Africans, every time we talk to you, oh, you are mentioning God, without even knowing that the origin of that word is Godan, Godan, which is not the creator. It is just a regular deity, from Europe, which they still worship today. But that's for another day. So I'm moving on to the next. So you can see right here. So this is the monument. It tells you, it says the African Burial Ground National Monument. So this is a national monument. Tells you right here, National Park Service, U.S. Department of the Interior. So the U.S. Department of Interior is actually in charge, of this place. It tells you what to do and what not to do when you get here. It's a sacred ground. This burial ground is a sacred place. It tells you, please act respectfully and do not eat, drink, play loud music, or stand on the burial mound, blah, blah, blah. It tells you the times they open and all that. So there's the African, again, I'm at the African Burial Ground National Monument here in New York. So I'm moving on to the next one. It tells you right here, it says a sacred tradition and a sacred ground. The rediscovery of the burial ground revealed that Africans and their descendants buried loved ones with dignity and respect. In the 17th and 18th centuries, our African ancestors were people of dignity and respect, and they buried their loved ones with dignity and respect. It tells you more than 90% of the 419 human skeletal remains were wrapped in shrouds, which is cloth, and most of the bodies were buried in full-size coffins. Africans continued other traditional practices, emphasis on traditional practices, such as placing pennies over the eyes to keep them closed. We still do this in Ghana today, not just in Ghana, all across West Africa, because we are all connected. In West Africa, in East Africa, Central Africa, we are all connected. Southern Africa, Northern Africa, we are all connected. We still do these practices today in Ghana. Small artifacts like beads. So some of you have been so brainwashed to the extent that you still see some of these things as evil. Our ancestors that were enslaved here were still practicing whatever they knowledge they had, right? Until later on, when they were brainwashed into taking up, their enslavers' religion, which is Christianity. But before then, they still practiced it. Right here, it tells you right here. I didn't make any of this up. It tells you that most of the bodies were still buried in full-size, blah, blah, blah. Africans continued other traditional practices, such as placing pennies over the eyes to keep them closed, small artifacts like beads, cowrie shells, right, and calf links sometimes accompanied the burials. Community activists, politicians, and many others fought vehemently to preserve the burial ground and to honor this history and culture. Their efforts led to the designation of this 0.34 acre of land for the Africa Burial Ground as a national monument. So even without community activists and politicians, mostly Africans or Africans in America, or what today you refer to as African Americans, this wouldn't even have happened, you know. And these were some of the activists. As back in 1992, activists hold vigil in 1992 to honor those laid to rest in the African burial ground. Do we do this? Do we even, because some of our ancestors were in Ghana, they resisted the slave trade, and some of them jumped into the sea, some of them did other stuff. Apart from the Asin Manso bath ground and during the Panafest festival where they pour libations in Cape Coast Castle, and around the Cape Coast area, do we even pay respects to our ancestors? Right? Do we? That's another question for another day. So it's telling you, despite a 1734 law limiting the number of enslaved Africans who could assemble for a funeral. So even when we wanted to bury our ancestors, they still had a law in place to stop us from burying our ancestors. It tells you right here. Right? Even when we wanted to bury our ancestors, they still had a law to ban us from burying our ancestors according to the African traditional way. It says right here, despite a 1731 law limiting the number of enslaved Africans who could assemble for a funeral to no more than 12, Africans and their descendants continue to venerate loved ones. And that's another thing. Most of you do not even understand what it means to venerate. So most of you ignorantly, because of religion, you've been brainwashed to think that it is evil. To venerate means to respect, right? So when you are venerating your ancestors, when you are pouring libation, when you are calling on their names, there's nothing evil about it. Those who brought you their religions call on their ancestors, right? They call on their ancestors when they are praying. And yet when Africans want to call on their ancestors, other ignorant people think it is so-called evil. I don't even know where they get the idea from. But, we all went through the religious, brainwashing whilst we were young. But today we are old. We are old enough to know the difference, right? So this burial ground right here was built by enslaved Africans. No, Chamber Street, which is today part of closer to Wall Street. I'm not too far from Wall Street. This is Chamber Street. Wall Street should be like 2 blocks from where I am. Okay, Wall Street, which is another story altogether. But some of you who were here earlier, you heard me talk about a little brief history about Wall Street. So this is a depiction of how Africans buried their loved ones. Okay, so I'm moving to the next one. Let's see what they have in store for us. So right here it says a place of remembrance, right? And it tells you from the 1690s until 1794, an estimated 15,000 enslaved and free Africans were laid to rest in the African burial ground. Right here. Those of you who just joined me, right here, 15,000 enslaved and free. So there were people who were enslaved and those who are free. The free simply meant that they had to buy their freedom. Some had to buy through working, for a number of years, and then they get their freedom. Others have to also pay their way, in earning their freedom, right? Tells you right here. So in 1991, during construction of the Ted Wise Federal Building, which is this building, I think is this building right here. This is Jacob Javits, Jacob K. Javits Federal Building. But I think this is the Wise Building, if I'm not mistaken, or probably this. Before it was built, right, 419 human skeletal remains were exhumed. Again, if you joined me earlier, you might have heard me say that the entire area that I'm standing on is a federal land, right? So that tells you that our ancestors were even buried on some of these buildings today, right? So do some of you see the significance of what I'm talking about? Maybe you might not even see the significance of what I'm talking about. The federal buildings, these are buildings that are used to run this country, New York, where I am, and the country at large. Some of them, where I am currently, have ancestors built their burials beneath those buildings. Do you see the irony of the situation I'm talking about? Do you see how important this is for us to know our history? Probably some of you do not even care anyway, but let's move on. So 419 human skeletal remains were exhumed. The rediscovery of the cemetery sparked vigorous efforts to preserve this hallowed ground. So in 1993, a small portion of the original 6.6 acre cemetery. So this is just 0. I think 32 on from the earlier slide. Just 0.32 acre, right? And originally it was 6.6. So that tells you this whole entire area, together with all the federal buildings, used to be a burial ground for our ancestors. Okay, let's move on. And it became the first below ground New York City landmark and a National Historic Landmark. African Burial Ground National Monument was proclaimed on February 27, 2006, widely regarded as one of America's most significant archaeological finds of the 20th century. It's a place of remembrance and reflection. Today, I was a little bit emotional, on personal level. There are so many things that are going on. So I just decided to visit this place. I've been here before. I've been here like probably twice already. But today I just decided, let me come in here and take a second look, So for me, it's a place of remembrance. It's a place of reflection. It's also a place of history. Very important history, not just for Africans living here in the United States or other parts of North America, but for Africans still living on the continent. You have to know your history. Our history is connected to every single part of the world. It's a global history. Some of you do not know this. Our history, let me regurgitate what I just said. Let me repeat what I just said. Our African history is connected to every single part of this world we live in. Okay? Whether it's China, whether it's Japan, whether it's Iran, the Middle East, so-called Middle East, whether it's Europe, whether it's North America, South America, our history is connected to all of it. Okay, one day we'll go into it in detail. So this is actually I'll take you in. This is the chamber right there. I'll take you in there. Hopefully I still have network when I go down because it's underground. So hopefully I get service, internet connection when I go down there for you to see how it looks like. The African diaspora is the forced removal of Africans from their homeland to different parts of the world. So it's not just here, the United States. If you go to other parts of North America, okay, Canada, Mexico, Cuba, Costa Rica, our people were sent there. If you go to South America, right? If you go to Brazil, if you go to Colombia, Venezuela, Honduras, Belize, Guyana, our ancestors were sent over there. So this is a 24-foot high ancestral chamber representing the soaring African spirit. Very key there. It represents the soaring African spirit and the distance below ground from which the ancestral remains were exhumed. It is made of the Verde Fontaine green granite from Africa. The heart-like Sankofa symbol right there. You're gonna see. I'll take you further so you see it in detail, right? The Sankofa symbol, which some of us have taken up as our symbol, right? That we are going back to history. We are going back to our ancestral history. We are going back. Everything that we have to know, we have to dig it up and know about it. We have to. There's no two ways about that. So it tells you the heart-like Sankofa symbol from West Africa. Obviously, if you are Ghanaian, most of you are Ghanaian here, you know where the Sankofa symbol is, right? It's from West Africa in general. But Ghana, you already know that it's a symbol. I think it's even one of the national symbols, if I'm not mistaken. And it says, learn from the past to prepare for the future. Again, without the past, you cannot understand the future. You cannot even predict how the future is going to look like. So it tells you right here, learn from the past to prepare for the future. Without the past, there's no future. You have to learn from the past to understand the present in order to prepare for the future. Okay? It tells you the interior recalls a ship's hold and provides a place for individual contemplation and prayer. So this is one of the artifacts, that came with it. In October 2003, the exhumed ancestral remains were reburied on this site. The bones and accompanying artifacts were placed in hand-carved wooden coffins made in Ghana. Very key information here. So most of the bodies that were exhumed here were actually buried in coffins that were brought from Ghana and lined with kente cloth, or kete if you are ever kete cloth. The coffins were placed in 7 crypts as close as possible to the original burial positions, with heads facing west. Again, 7 is the number. For those of you religious folks, if you know anything about 7, or if you know anything about numerology, you understand why they used only 7 to represent, all the ancestors. Why they have 7 days. Okay, if you know anything about, numerology and you understand numbers, okay, you understand why. 7 burial mounds mark the locations of the reinterment. If you wish, you may place flowers on top of the burial mounds. Well, placing flower on top of a burial mound is a Western thing. I'm not an European to be doing that. I'm an African. So for me, reflection is more important for me. Again, there's the African Burial Ground National Monument right here. So I'm going to take you to the monument proper, and hopefully I have service down there so you can see. So right here we have, let me move back a little bit so you can see. So it says right here on the wall. So this is the monument. Okay, this is the monument. As you can see, I'm actually still on the ground. This is the monument right here, and it says, for those who were lost, for all those who were stolen. Pay attention. For all those who were lost, right? Lost, through the slave trade. For all those who were stolen. And again, most of the narratives you hear, or the so-called his story that you hear, never mention this portion of it, that Africans were stolen. They always have a different narrative, but there were lots of them that were stolen. For all those who were left behind, for all those who were not forgotten. So for all those who were lost, for all those who were stolen, for all those who were left behind, and for all those who were forgotten, with the Sankofa sign right here. So this monument is in honor of our ancestors. There's a little fountain right here, that goes down. So let me take you down. Hopefully I still have
this is kind of how it looks at
I still have service, and then we can. So the first one right here is the Nsibidi symbol. If you know anything about Nsibidi, it's actually a language, okay, mostly in Cameroon and some parts of Nigeria, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, some parts of Cape Verde, Gabon, that area, right? But Nsibidi, this symbol right here, I mean, most West Africans have a similar symbol anyway. It's a symbol for love and unity, okay? The essence of, the reason why, the importance of, the emphasis on love and unity. Most of you are so religious, but you don't even have that love. You don't want to unite, right? And then you have the Akuma. This is the Akan motif, right, of Akuma, which is endurance. It tells you right there. And then you have the Denchem, which is a symbol of adaptability. Okay, how to adapt. You know, like adapting to your environment, adapting to nature, adapting to any situation. The denchem. Then you have I don't even know how to pronounce that, but Jinimen, whatever it is, which is this unique symbol representing humility and strength, right? Then you have this symbol right here, which is Funtunfu Nifu, right? Denchem Fu Fun Efu, whatever it is. I think it is cheap, but I see Denchem in there. It's representing unity in diversity. Then you have the Akuma Ntoaso, right? Or Ntoso, whatever it is. It says Akuma Ntoso. This symbol is for understanding. Then you have Matimase, which is a symbol for wisdom and prudence. Okay, it goes all the way to the end. But hopefully I still have service and I'll take you around to the end. And then it tells you right here, it's Baron, right? It's a male cemetery guardian, whatever that symbol means. So this symbol here, is for male cemetery garden. It represents a male cemetery garden. This symbol here, it's Yowa. It represents continuity of human life. Okay, because as Africans, we believe in reincarnation. So you reincarnate, you go and come back, you go and come back, you go and come back. So this symbol, Yowa, is continuity of human life. This symbol right here is Man Bridget, right? That's what it says. Female cemetery guardian, right? This symbol right here. This symbol is for the Muslims, right? It's what you call the crescent and the moon. So Tanit for the Islamic faith. And mind you, a lot of the people that actually came to as enslaved people or enslaved Africans were actually Muslims. Look, one day we'll go even into the history of the United States and show you how Muslims dominated this country, like all the way into even the original constitution. How Morocco was the first country that actually recognized the United States as an independent country, right? Morocco, which is in Africa. But that's today is for ancestral African burial ground, which is a very sacred area. So we wouldn't go into those topics. Then this is for the for the Christians, right? Hello. This is for the Christians, those who go by that faith, right? And then this is a symbol for the medicine wheel, which is the Native American circle of life. I've already emphasized on the fact that most of these Native American tribes, so-called Native American tribes, are actually Africans too. Then we come to the big one, the Ankh. The Ankh, for those of you who know what the Ankh represents, okay, it represents the male and female energies, right? It represents, it shows you that without the male, a positive and negative energy, there's nothing like life. The male and female energy has to come together to form life. Without positive charge and a negative charge, there's no electricity. It just tells you that it represents balance. Balance in life, balance of nature, whatever. This is a symbol they took from our ancient Egyptian symbol of life, right? The Ankh. This is the symbol they took. They copied, just like they did with the Bible, they copied everything and then they produced this. The cross, the Christian cross, right? We're not going to go into the history of it. One day we'll do that. But I'm just showing you proof. right? This is the ankh from which had, if you go into most villages in Ghana, right, where they still have the tradition and culture intact, they always have this symbol still in their artifacts, in their daily lives and all of it. They still have it in Ghana, especially. So compare the two. This is a production of Christianity which was brought to you by conquered city of Constantine, and this had been in existence for thousands and thousands of years before Constantine became the progenitor of the Christian religion. This is some education right there. This is another symbol, and it says Shawun. I don't even know what that means, but it says right here it represents or symbolizes the imperishability and endurance. Africans were so enduring, they endured every hardship, every evil that befell them. They were able to withstand it, and they were able to endure. And this right here is Asase Yedru, right? Asase Yedru, which is tree, another tree symbol or Akan symbol, which is divinity of the Mother Earth. Okay, Mother Nature. Earth is considered Mother Nature. That's why most of you, when you're singing your national, whatever country you are from, when you're singing your national anthem, most of the time you mention motherland, right? Because the land is considered to be a woman, okay? Mother Nature or Mother Earth. And then you have here Instruma, right? A symbol of Instruma, which is guardianship, right? This is another one of the symbols that when the enslaved people, when they were enslaved, they actually used some of these symbols. All these symbols you see here, all these symbols you see here, they actually use them as a symbol to remember who they were, and act accordingly. There's another one here called the Inkisi Sarabanda, right? This symbol right here, okay, it's the Inkisi Sarabanda, which is a signature of the spirit. Then there's this one right here, which is the Almighty Jinyame. Most of you already are familiar with this symbol. Supremacy of, not God, no, supremacy of the Creator. Nyame is not God. Again, this is how they brainwash a lot of people. Nyame, right, is not God, and Nyame, which is Akan, it actually means multiple deities. God is just God is just one of the deities that Europeans brought to Africans when they brought Christianity. God comes from the original deity called Godan, which is Godan. One day we'll go in depth into that as well. But you already know what the Jinyame represents. Jinyame, which is the supremacy of the Creator. Then the Almighty One. This, my ever fond Yoruba folks, they know what this is. This is the Legba, which in Yoruba tradition, in fond tradition, in ever tradition, in even to some extent Gadangbe, they know what it means, they know what it represents, right? This is the guardian of the crossroads. That's the meaning. There are some other symbols up here, but I can't go there right now, because of the fountain. Maybe I could. No, I can't. So basically, this is the African burial ground. This is where most of our people, our ancestors were actually buried. It tells you right here signs. So all these signs, right? All these signs and these symbols you see right here. All these signs and symbols you see right here is, of the African diaspora. In this sense, the African diaspora are the Africans that are in Ghana. Most of you, those watching me right now, engraved around the perimeter wall, encircling the libation court. So this is the libation court. So here, even in the United States, they still pour libation to honor our ancestors. And yet, you sit in Ghana being ignorant, as most of you were brainwashed with. You see libation as evil. It's telling you right here. So this is what they call the libation court, right here. You see how the circled area, right? I wish I could even take off my slippers before I step foot in there, because these are, for me, it's really sacred, you know. It's just a way of paying respect, and being an African, I have to do that. I'll do that before I leave. So it's telling you the symbols come from different areas and cultures throughout the diaspora, you know. These symbols are reminders of the complexity and diversity of African culture's manifestation. So, as a sign of respect, okay, I'll just take off my bag and my slippers. This is my slippers right there, because I respect my ancestors so much, because they are everything. Without them, I wouldn't even be here, you know. So, as a sign of respect, I'm going to take off my, slippers, like, as a sign of respect before I enter. You know, I just entered. So I just entered, you know, I just want to take you around and see. Right here it tells you burial 135 man between 30 and 40 years. Right here. You know, let me move back a little bit. So it tells you on this area, the people that were buried here are 135, right? And they're between 30 and 40 years. So our ancestors that were buried here, where I'm standing, you can see my feet right there. I took off my slippers as a sign of respect for our ancestors, right? Those that were buried here were between 30 and 40 years. How evil is that? And here it says right there, 22 children were buried. The children were between the ages of 2.5 and 4 years. Child between 2.5 and 4.5 years old. So the children that were buried, 22 children, were between the ages of 2.5 and 4.5. Okay, there you see the Ankh symbol right there. Very key symbol right there. And here on this section, it tells you 328 women between the ages of 40 and 50 were buried on this side. And here again you see the Jinyame symbol and the Akuman Koso symbol we saw earlier. If you remember, we saw them somewhere here. And here 128 infants, right? Infants under 2.5 months. So some of you just you don't see the level of evil that was committed here, especially here where I am right now, right? Infants, 2.5 months old kids, babies, infants were actually, you know, buried as well. 128 right there, you can see it. And here 99, you know, children between the ages of 6 and 10 years. You know, 99 children between the ages of 6 and 10 years were buried here. Again, you see the Denchem symbol, right? I missed Denchem symbol right there. I missed this symbol, the spiral symbol right there. Here, burial of 210 men between the ages of 35 and 40 years. So these are all young men, you know, young, vibrant men and women and kids that were buried. Right here you have the Ankh symbol again. Very important symbol right there, from which they gave you the cross, the Christian cross. Okay, but this is a different symbol, which is the symbol of life. And then you have the other two symbols right there. On this side you have 154 women between 22 25 and 29 years that were buried. On this side, you have 395 men that were aged between 43 to 53 years. And then here you have adults, you know, between undetermined age. They don't really know the age. And then here is actually another group of infants, 5 of them between the ages of 6 months and 1 year. And on this side is 333 people of men aged between 45 to 55 years. Here is 332 probably men between the ages of 35 to 40 years. Okay, so look, it goes on, and this is one of the flowers that's given to them, you know, that just to remember the ancestors that were buried in this place. You know, so once again, let me just, you know, zoom, go at 360 so you see some of the symbols that I was talking about earlier, you know. So these are some of the symbols, you know, that we were taking a look at. So I think I'll end it here. It's a lot of emotions, you know, to take in. A lot of emotions to take in. Especially, well, I've always known the, how do you call it, the death, you know, the deaths to which the so-called, not so-called, the slave trade, you know, took, the various deaths in terms of shape, form that it took. But this, I've been here already. I've been here like 2-3 times already. This is the first time I'm trying to capture it on video for most of you to understand, you know. Those of you who just joined me, later on, if you get a chance, go back and watch from the beginning. You know, the history I gave from the beginning all the way to this point. And know that, know why it's really important for some of us who always talk about history. It's not because we just want to talk. No. It's about knowing who you are, knowing your history, knowing everything about yourself, you know, as an individual, then as a tribe, then as before, you know, a country, right? And then you connect all of it to various parts of the globe where our people belong to, or our people are still, I mean, basically our connection to the globe in general. Everywhere you go, our history is there. Every single, you know, place on this planet that you go to, our history is there. So, again, once again, this is the area where ancestors pour libation. Okay, they pour libation before they buried the people, before they buried their loved ones. You know, so the emphasis on libation, because if this is done here on a land that's being controlled by Europeans, why do you think that it is? Most of you have been, those of you that have been brainwashed to think that libation is evil. Like, I don't get it. I really don't get it. Our ancestors here are being honored. I mean, it's not the best of honoring them, okay, but at least there's some sort of recognition that our ancestors built this place, built this land. Again, for those of you who just joined, I already gave the history as to how most of these buildings you see up here, okay, most of these buildings which form part of the 6.6 acre land that had ancestors being buried on, today are federal buildings that run this country. I've already done that, so you can go back and watch. So once again, before I leave, I just want to take you through the symbols again. So This is the legba. You already know the legba, what the legba means, especially for my Fon people, my Yoruba people, my Ewe people, my Gadangbe people. You know what this legba represents, this symbol here. And then the Jinyame, the Almighty Jinyame, supremacy of the Creator. Once again, let me capture it really nicely. And then this right here, this symbol right here, we already spoke about it. Right here, the Ensroma symbol, which is guardianship. And this symbol right here, it's for signature of the spirit. Okay. This right here is Asasi Yedro, which is divinity of Mother Earth. Very important. Then this right here is imperishability and endurance, telling you that ancestors actually endured everything, all the things that befell them, they were able to endure. The original symbol called the Ankh, the symbol of life. Okay, again, those of you who love to know more about your culture and your traditions, you go back to your villages and pay attention to the symbols they use, especially in Ghana. This is a prominent symbol they use. They still use it today in Ghana. You have the medicine wheel, you have the Christian cross, you have the Muslim crescent and the moon. Then you have the female cemetery guardian symbol right here, right? Then you have the Yowa, which is the continuity of human life. Then you have the male cemetery, guardian, as they call it. And then you have the Matimase, the wisdom and prudence symbol. And then you have the Akuman Toso, which is the understanding. Okay. Then you have this Denchem Funun Funifu, unity in diversity. Unity in diversity. And I'll say this to tell especially the youth, those who have been brainwashed with partisan political, ideologies. This is the time for you to unite in diversity. Yes, you come from different parties, but unite around those who are, calling for a proper distribution of the wealth. Okay, so majority of the people won't suffer in Ghana. You have to unite, even though you are from diverse backgrounds. Forget about your religion. Forget about your partisan politics. Forget about your tribal politics or tribal affiliations. Come together. There's magic in numbers. Unity in diversity. Very important. Then you have the symbol of humility and strength. And then you have the Denchem, which is the symbol of adaptability. Our ancestors were able to adapt to all the inhuman treatments, all the killings, all the kidnappings, all the evil that befell them. They were still able to adapt. And this is why you have this here, to show you that our ancestors were able to adapt. Wherever, Africans have been, they've been able to adapt. Akuma, endurance, again. The symbol of endurance is one thing, which has been going throughout this entire time I've been here. And then the Insibidi symbol. So this is where time will permit me. I might have to go. Hopefully I might bring you another, live video maybe in the future. I really don't know. But I'll leave you with this. I'll leave you with this profound statement. Right here at the African burial ground, with one of these important symbol, here. If you are Ghanaian, Akan, Ewe, Gadangbe, Hausa, Dagomba, Fulani, Nzima, you know, Fanti, whatever it is that you are, you know, you might probably recognize this symbol right there. But then more profound is the statement that is attached to this symbol. Right here at the African Burial Ground in New York. It says right here, for all those who were lost, for all those who were stolen, for all those who were left behind, for all those who were not forgotten. That's a very profound statement. For all those who were lost, those who were stolen, those who were left behind, for all those who were not forgotten. I say peace to all of you. Take care of yourself and be good.